Now I'd like to take the time here to give you an introduction of Famous Dave, and today we are all here to have we're very fortunate to take part and listen to our speaker, who is not only a successful entrepreneur, but also very much a visionary. Dave Anderson is best known as Famous Dave, founder of Famous Dave's of America, featuring the best ribs in America. With over 180 restaurants and growing, Famous Dave's has received unprecedented recognition, including Hottest Concepts in America by Nation's Restaurant News, reaching over $500 million in sales and nearly 700 awards. Dave's creative genius has helped found several publicly traded companies on Wall Street, creating over 20,000 new jobs and billions of dollars in sales. Dave's amazing against all odds life story has been featured in 2 best-selling books on the New York Times bestsellers list, best described as the man who won't quit. Dave has experienced adversity, frustration, and bankruptcy, as well as tremendous success. Dave received a prestigious presidential appointment, which required a full Senate confirmation, and has served several governors in advisory positions. Dave has appeared on all major networks, including the Food Network, the Discovery Channel, the Travel Channel, Regis, CNBC's The Next Big Idea with Donnie Deutsch, Fox and Friends Morning Show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, to receive Oprah's Angel Award for his leadership work with at-risk youth. This highly successful entrepreneur was in the bottom half of his high school class, but has earned his master's degree from Harvard University without an undergraduate degree, and has received an honorary doctorate degree for his life's work. Today, you will hear from a man who knows how to succeed, but more importantly, his message to you is, everyone within them has the seeds of greatness. Dave stresses no matter how tough things may seem today, if you never give up on your dream and you have the willingness to work hard, today's rewards will always come. Please help me and welcome Famous Dave Anderson.
Good morning. Sounds like some of you still asleep. I'm excited to be here this morning, and whenever I go to anywhere to share my life story, one of the things that I always do is I always start off with a rousing cheer. So I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. And what's going to happen is I'm going to repeat this cheer first, and then we'll all join in on the count of 3. The cheer goes like this: I feel happy, I feel healthy, I feel terrific. So let me repeat it. It goes, I feel happy, I feel healthy, I feel terrific. On the count of 3, we'll all join in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I feel happy, I feel healthy, I feel terrific. That was lousy. Some of you had your hands in your pockets. Some of you had your hands like this. A few of you were looking around thinking, this is hokey. Do I really need to do it? No, you don't need to do it. You can stay in the back seats all of your life. In fact, I usually encourage everybody to come up front and fill in, because how many of you have kids? How many of you like to have your kids be back row seaters? That's not true. We all want our kids to be front row seaters. So I'm not going to make you move today, but I would encourage you, wherever you go, always be front row seaters. But let's do this again, and it's okay to let her rip, because we're living in a very competitive society today, where you got to be able to stand up. You got to let the world know that you're in business. You got to let the world know that you're alive, because there are other people that are out there that want to run you over. They want to compete. They're out for your jobs. They're out for your marketplace. So I would encourage all of you just to let her rip. Just let it all hang out. On the count of 3, here we go. 1, 2, 3. I feel happy. I feel healthy. I feel terrific. All right, that was pretty good. Now repeat. I can say sit down. You guys are giving up on me already. Repeat after me. I am a winner.
I am a winner.
I am a superstar.
I am a superstar.
I am a champion.
I am a champion.
Now, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think about your own life. And what I want you to think about is I want you to think about some of the tough times that you've been through. But I also want you to think about how you stood in there and how you weathered those tough times. And then I want you to think about your successes, how you pulled through, because each and every one of you is amazing. Each and every one of you was born with the seeds of greatness within you. You are amazing. And just tell yourself from within, I am amazing. Now, I want you to open your eyes. And I want you to look at somebody either to your right or your left. And I want you to think about this. The person next to you has been through tough times. That person next to you has thrived, has survived tough times. And that person next to you has done some amazing things. So I want you to turn to that person and tell them, I am in awe of you. I am in awe of you. I think you are amazing. And I think you're good looking. Let's not go that far. All right, now you can say this, Lord.
Yeah, try somebody.
Wherever I go, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, I have an opportunity to talk with some amazing other business leaders and other entrepreneurs, and we often talk about what it takes to be successful in life. And we'll share with each other what we look for in somebody that we're going to hire, how we look for somebody who will be a team leader, how somebody will lead our business. And we're always asking each other, well, what do you think are the most important character traits? And almost without a doubt, everyone always says, we look for somebody who's passionate, somebody who's enthusiastic, somebody who can get in and cheer people up and be a raving, loyal ambassador for our company or our organization. And I don't know about you, but I love sports. I think sports are highly competitive, and everybody within us has that drive to want to succeed, to want to win. And I especially love college. But I get a kick out of watching professional football. I live in the Twin Cities, so in the Twin Cities we have the Vikings, and I always get a kick out of grown people sitting in the stands that will dress up. They'll wear pointy helmets on their head with horns, gold braids, and they're cheering to no end their team. And then I know I'm in Wisconsin, so I had to put one of these in here. And I've enjoyed watching the Green Bay Packers over the years. And with an open field, I know a couple times your team has been in the playoffs and experienced incredible snowstorms where not even the team's crew could shovel out Lambeau Field, and then they would put out an all-points bulletin for all fans to come and help dig out Lambeau Field. And sure enough, they would work throughout the night and they would shovel. But then next day, again, I would get such a kick out of the team. A team that almost smacks of football, if you've ever been to Lambeau Field. And to see fans so excited about their team that they'll sit in below freezing weather half naked. One side of their body painted green, the other side painted yellow, and what do they have on their heads? Cheese. And why isn't it we can't show up every day for our families, for our own work, with that same type of enthusiasm? Now, I'm not asking you to show up at work half naked, but think about it. These fans, these raving loyal fans, may never ever get a chance to meet their heroes. And wouldn't you say that your own family are heroes? Wouldn't you say that the people you work with are heroes? Or the customers or the people that live in your community are heroes? And so often we just pass them on a sidewalk and, we don't even acknowledge them. I think we're living in a day and age that is so highly competitive. And I want to share with you some thoughts today of what it takes to be competitive, what it takes to be successful. And I believe that my story is no different than any of the people that are sitting in this room. I wasn't born on the right side of the tracks. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Both my parents are Native American. My dad's a full-blood Choctaw Indian from Idabel, Oklahoma. And my mom is from the Lakota tribe up in Hayward. And people who know where Idabel, Oklahoma is, because it is in the furthest southeast corner in the state of Oklahoma, and they say, well, how did some southern boy ever meet some gal from way up north? Well, both of my parents were taken from their families by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and stuck at Indian boarding schools. And a lot of people often think that kind of stuff only happened back in George Washington's day or Abraham Lincoln's day, but my parents, this generation, taken from their families and stuck in Indian boarding schools. Now, fortunately for me, there's a good side to this story because they met. They met at Haskell Institute for Indians in Lawrence, Kansas, and my dad went off to the war, but when he came back, married my mom. And back in the late 40s, the only place where you could get a job was in Chicago because Chicago was really building up. So they moved to Chicago. And to show you how passionate my dad was for good old Southern home cooking, being from the South, and how much he loved his Southern barbecue, he used to haul my mom down south every other weekend till she learned how to cook Southern. And so even though we lived in Chicago, I grew up eating some of the best Southern home cooking, country fried chicken, cornbread. Every day my mom would cook these wonderful meals. But, you know, for me growing up on the west side of Chicago, I never thought that I could succeed. I used to think like I was the dumbest kid in class. And I know that a lot of you who are parents, you're concerned about your own children. You're concerned about your own opportunities in life, and you often wonder, you know, will my kids have the same opportunity? Or how can I help my children? You know, the only way that we could ever create opportunities for our children is that we got to stand up. And we got to let our abilities, our dreams, our hopes be a driving force. Because, you know, I think this last week we saw how screwed up and how gridlocked our government can be in Washington, D.C. And being an entrepreneur and being a leader in my community, I'm often asked, Dave, what do you think of what's happening out there? And will this affect the economy? And I want to share something with you folks. Don't ever pin your future. Don't ever pin the hopes for your family on the vote of some politician in Washington, D.C. And we often talk about the economy. And when you're talking about the economy, it's very easy to say, well, it's the president's fault, or it's the politician's fault, or, you know, it's the marketplace. The marketplace drives the economy, and the economy's going downhill. America's going downhill. And what I share with everybody I can, I say, if you really understand what's happening here, you will understand this is one of the greatest opportunities. But here's what you got to do. You can't say the economy, because when you say the economy, it's very easy to blame other people for the economy. You know, because of the economy, we've lost jobs. Because of the economy, we've lost valuable resources. Here's what you got to do. Every day you get up, you got to have this mindset that it isn't the economy, it's my economy. Everybody repeat after me. My economy. My economy. You see, when you say my economy, you can't blame anybody, can you? And really, when we come right down to it, it's my economy. It's up to us to make the choices. It's up to us to have the dreams and the visions that we don't ever give up on. That no matter where you come from, no matter what you've been through, is that you have within you a drive. And if you never ever give up, you can do some amazing things, because that is my story. I grew up never believing that I could succeed. I grew up not having opportunities that other people have had. I used to think I was the dumbest kid in class. And for good reason. It wasn't until years later that I found out that I had attention deficit disorder. So, when you look at my life story is really starting out from nothing and being able to turn the impossible into the possible. What you're looking at is an Indian fry bread stand. A lot of times people would say, well, Dave, how did you get your start in the restaurant business? And if you ask a lot of other people, they'll tell you, well, I was a dishwasher in my dad's business, or when I was starting out, I used to wait tables in college. This is my first restaurant. It's an Indian fry bread stand, and this is at the Charcuterie Powwow in Hayward, Wisconsin. Every third week in July, my mother would, to raise extra money, would set up an Indian fry bread stand, and that's where I learned how to cook. I learned how to make Indian fry bread, wild rice soup, venison sandwiches that we would sell at Indian powwows. So what you're looking at is nothing more than a lean-to held up by saplings covered by a tarp. And I think this proves that, from humble beginnings, anything is possible. We didn't have a lot of money back then. We weren't necessarily broke. My parents had to watch every penny. But I think what this represents is that we are blessed more than we often give credit for. We are blessed more than we often thank the good Lord for what we've been given. And as a kid growing up, not thinking that I could succeed, never believing that I would have a future, I would often look out my parents' window. We lived in a third-floor apartment. And I remember back then as a kid how hot it used to get. And it seems like our weather is changing, because back in the 50s, we used to have weeks on end where the temperatures would be way up over 100 degrees day after day. And I can remember looking out that third-floor apartment window and looking out onto the streets of Chicago, watching that heat just rise off that concrete and that asphalt. And my mom, to get us out of that excruciating heat, would put us on the Sioux Line Railroad, and we would travel all night. And it seemed like we stopped at every small town in Wisconsin until we got to Spooner, where somebody would pick us up from the tribe, and we would travel down dusty gravel roads until we got to the Charcuterie Reservation where my grandmother lived. And it was nothing more than a 3-room shack. No running water, no electricity. We used to have to chop wood for cooking or to heat that little 3-room shack. But what I remember as a kid was laying in my grandmother's bed, looking out of her window and looking into that northern sky. You see, as a kid growing up in Chicago, I never saw a sky that was so incredibly midnight blue, so dark that the stars just shone bright. And as a little kid, I would just look at all those billions of stars, and I would see stars that shone so bright. And I saw a lot of stars, billions of stars, that just twinkled, and then they seemed to fade off into the vastness of space. And I often thought to myself growing up, looking at those stars, would my life be like one of those stars that shone bright? Or would my life be like one of those other billions of other stars that just faded off into the vastness of space? My story is no different than anybody sitting in this room. My story is no different than any of your sons and daughters. We can do amazing things if we stay true to our dreams. Fortunately, I had a chance to meet a mentor who said, Dave, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you've been through, but you got to change who you are. You got to become a learner. You got to become a reader. And he said, Dave, if you put the pure, the clean, the powerful, and the positive into your mind, you can change who you are. And one of the most significant things he said to me was, you become what you think about all of the time. You got to be so focused. You got to think about what you're going to become. It just has to take over every cell of your body. You become what you think about all the time. And as a kid, I didn't quite understand that because this is what I had on my mind. I had to throw that in there. But growing up, my dad, he loved his barbecue. And several times a year, he had to make his barbecue, but he didn't have the right ingredients. He would drive all the way down south to buy the right hot sauces, to buy the right cornmeal, to buy different types of corn syrups that he used in his barbecue sauces. And I can remember the first time I ever really remember eating a barbecued rib. I was coming home from school. I was just a little kid, could barely open the screen door. And I can remember one day opening up that screen door, and I was just overwhelmed by the most incredible hickory smelling smoke. How many of you ever driven down a country road and somebody had a fireplace going and that smoke was just kind of drifting across the road, and when you drove through it, it just smelled so incredible. And that's what I smelled when I opened the door to our apartment, and I ran into the kitchen, and there was my dad. He was opening up these newspapers, and the most incredible hickory smoked ribs were in there. Back then we never worried about all this poisoning and all this kind of stuff. We never got sick back then. But I can remember him giving me one of those ribs, and it was so juicy, it was so tender, it was so smoky. And I knew right then and there that I was going to be all about barbecue. I knew right then that I wanted to be America's Rib King. And to this day, I still remember that. And all of my life, I have been striving to become the best rib cook. There's a couple lessons that I want to share with you today. Is that life is about change. And I know sometimes change can be the most toughest thing, but we are living in a day of accelerated change that I think it's causing more problems. Because back when I was growing up, back in the 50s and early 60s, it seemed like if something changed, we had enough time to cope with it. How many of you have children? I want you to think of this. More change is happening in one day of their life than in 10 years of your life. Think about that. More change is happening in one day of your children's life than in 10 years of our life. What we're seeing in the marketplace is incredible. And the internet has a lot to do with it. Brilliant people, for the first time, are able to communicate with other brilliant people all over the world. Our access to information, our access to technology is incredible. But a lot of us, we think that change happens out there. Or we don't want to change. How many of you have ever experienced this, or how many of you ever thought, well, things are so good right now, why do we have to change? Well, anybody that says that, you're going to be a dinosaur real fast because the world is just going to zoom right by you. We have to be about change. But more than that, if you are not on a constant mission to change who you are, you're not growing. How many of you have computers at home where sometimes you got to ask your kids, could you help me out with this? How about cell phones? It used to be that teachers could type faster than the kids. Today, these kids can text faster and not even look at, I think one kid just won fastest text, something like 700 words a minute. They don't even look at these things, and And then it used to be, as parents or even as teachers, it was our responsibility to teach kids about what's happening in the world. But today, these kids know more about what's happening all over the globe than we do. And what's really interesting, kids that can't even drive, but with one stroke of a keypad, they're global. Some of my favorite quotes about change is, if you always did what you always did, you're always going to get what you always got. Or the thinking and behavior that got you where you are today is not the thinking and behavior that you need to stretch to where you need to grow tomorrow. Or my favorite is the definition of insanity. You all know that one. If you always did what you always did, but you do the same thing day in, day out, and you expect different results, that's insanity. But a lot of us, we do the same thing day in, day out, expecting things to change. We have to be about change. And sometimes, when I'm giving these talks and I get really excited and I get really enthusiastic and I get so passionate about something, I can really stand up here and just let her rip. And then somebody will come up to me afterwards, they'll say, Dave, it's easy for you. You can get up there and you can just let the world know what you're thinking about. Gosh, I could never do that. I was the most shyest kid. I'm really a bashful person. And then I surprise them when I tell them, well, you're looking at somebody who had a hard time being like I am today. Because I was the shyest kid in class. And a lot of you probably look at me and say, what? This guy? But I also realized is that if my life was going to be different, if I was going to be successful as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, I had to change. And for years, I could never stand up in front of a group and share any kind of story. In fact, the first speech I ever gave was to a college group in the city of Chicago. It was supposed to be a 45-minute speech to young entrepreneurs and local business people. That 45-minute speech lasted all of 5 minutes. I never once looked at the audience. I just had my notes, and my note. Back then we had cheap ink, and I was sweating, and the ink was running all over my notes, and I was a mess. My suit coat was wringing wet in the armpits. And as soon as I had nothing more to say, I ran out the side doors. And I swore that I would never get up in front of another audience again in my life. But I also realized is that I had to change. And so for years, I would stand in my parents' basement with a $5 mirror from Kmart. And I would say the ABCs out loud to myself. I would go, A, B, C. And I had a candle that I tried to put out. And I would say, 1, 2, 3. And I would read books to myself for hours every day. And I joined Toastmasters. I was determined to change who I am. Now I share these things, and it's almost like I'm telling on myself. It's not easy to be up here and tell people what's wrong about, the things you've been through or the things that you struggled with. But I don't believe my story would ever be meaningful if I didn't share these things with you. And sometimes business owners will say, or business associates of mine will say, Dave, when you're running around the country, do you really need to share with people the bad things that have happened in your life? People really just want to hear about the good things you've done, and you want to inspire them, give them hope. But I also think that if I didn't share with you the things I needed to change in my life, that my story wouldn't be meaningful. Because the other thing I had to change is I had to get sober. And I'm not afraid to talk about this because I know there isn't a person in this room that doesn't have either a parent, a spouse, brother, sister, or a son or daughter that isn't struggling with the ravages of addiction. And for me, I had to change. And fortunately, I had a wife who cared enough about me that she put me in treatment. There's a lot of us that have to deal with tough issues. There's a lot of us that struggle. And as business owners, as people who are leaders in your community, and I really believe that, that the strength of America is not in Washington, D.C., but It's right here today. The people are in this room. You are the strength of America. It's not what happens in Washington, D.C., but it's what happens here. It's how you care, how you're willing to stand up and make a difference, how you're willing to be about change yourself, and to stay true to your dreams, stay true to the things, the values that you have. Because we're living in a day where things are changing, and it seems like our leaders don't have values. And I want to encourage all of you. I know it's tough, but you got to stay true to your values. We have to raise our young people with hope, believing that anything is possible. And they can't do that if they see the leaders, politicians, religious leaders. You know, you can't pick up a newspaper today without reading how somebody had a breakdown in moral character. But this is why we need to stand up. This is why we need to stand up. Yes, life is about change. But the hardest thing to understand is that change does not happen out there. You know, if we had a different president, things would be different. The economy would be better. If I had a different job, if I had a different boss, if I was married to somebody different, if I was skinnier, if I was more prettier, if I was more handsome, smarter, things would be different. But folks, the fundamental thing about change is that it does not happen out there. All change only happens here. I believe Mahatma Gandhi said it best when he said, become the change that you want to see in the world. And for me, starting out as the dumbest kid in class, I hated learning. I hated reading, and I can remember sitting at my parents' table because my dad didn't want me to be a dumb kid. He couldn't understand the report cards I brought home that had the C's, the D's, the F's on it. And he would sit me at the kitchen table, and I would look at these blank pieces of paper, and I would just stare at them. I didn't know what to write. I didn't, book reports. My God, I couldn't do a book report. I didn't know where to begin. How do you write something? How do you think about something? And it wasn't, like I said before, it wasn't until years later that I found out that attention deficit disorder, which explained a lot of things, because I can remember back sitting in class and I'd be daydreaming, and the teacher would say, Anderson, pay attention. Quit looking out the window and daydreaming. Today, I've learned how to turn my weaknesses into my strengths. And I understand today that's called visioning. And then my teachers and my parents would say, you got to focus, you got to pay attention, you got to stay with one thing here. Today I've learned that's called multitasking. But I also have a wonderful wife who's very organized, and then I have my Claire back there. She keeps me on the straight and narrow, tells me what I got to do next. But I've been able to be successful because I've been able to admit that I needed help. And sometimes when you're a triple-driven A-type personality, you don't want to admit that you need help. But I will tell you that if you want to be successful, is that you got to be able to ask for help. And for me, I had to start learning. And today, one of the reasons why I share this picture with you is that I am a voracious reader. I am always reading. I read 2 to 3 books, at least 1 book a week. I read at least 3 newspapers a day. I read probably 50 to 60 magazines a month. And I'm not reading those magazines to see what Britney Spears or Tiger Woods are up to, or Miley Cyrus. I'm reading to see what people are interested in, the trends. What are they wearing? What are they eating? And I could do a whole class on personal research and development. Because I believe today, if you don't have a personal commitment to learning, that you are going to be a dinosaur. That there are more competitive people. And today, we are seeing a global influx into the marketplace. And you may feel insulated right here in this community. But I will share with you that today with the internet, that you can access anything. And people are accessing us, finding out all about who we are. and they're out to compete with us in the marketplace. And by the way, speaking of learning, I went from not being able to write a book report to writing all kinds of books. I have all my secret recipes here. I'll have these books for sale. I'll be glad to autograph them. Some of the best barbecue recipes are in here. And a lot of things I learned the hard way. Life skills for success. The ultimate manual for achieving your very best. You know, if you think of the things that I've gone through and becoming one of the most successful entrepreneurs. In fact, last year I was inducted into the National Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame, along with Fred DeLuca from Subway and Truett Cathy from Chick-fil-A and Sarah Blakely from Spanx. Now, I never knew what Spanx were, but my wife told me I could use some. But I have these incredible books, and those of you who have kids, I have probably one of the best books. It's called Report Cards to Paychecks. I would make sure that you get this. There's a lot of good information. How to get your first job. And one of the things that I share, I'll get to that in a second, but I wanted to show you something. This book here, when I first wrote it, cost me something like $5,000 to have the cover designed. And then I paid $2,500 to have it edited, proofread. When I did this book, I think Claire, how many of you are familiar with elance.com? One of you are. Elance.com is, you could go, it's elance, just like it sounds, .com. You can find any profession for sale anywhere in the world. And you know, there are people in Romania, there are people in China, there are people in India that are brilliant. And this is what you guys are facing today. Claire, what did I pay for this? $300 for the cover. What did I pay to have it edited? $500. Big difference. Claire was just telling me we got somebody in India that's working on our website that we're going to pay $4 an hour to. Brilliant people. But this is the world that we're living in. We got to be about learning, each and every one of us. If we're not learning something new every day, the world is going to pass you by. You know, each and every one of you is like your own business entity. And each and every one of you has to have a personal research and development budget. And if you're not reading a book a week, you know, a book a week is only like $20, and times 52 or 50 weeks, that's $1,000. Are you even investing that $1,000 back into yourself? We have to be about change. And I know at Famous Dave's, one of the biggest things that we strive for is training. We spend more money per person in training than almost any other company. But that's one of the reasons why we keep succeeding. We have our tough times too, but we overcome those tough times. We got to be about learning. For somebody, I throw this in because that's proof. I actually did get my master's degree from Harvard University. You know, try that sometime. Hey, Harvard, I had C's, D's, and F's in high school. I don't have an undergraduate degree, but I want in your master's program. Not only that, I had a full ride. They paid for it all, paid for my room, tuition. Following your passion. Don't live a frustrated life doing something you don't love to do. And I know sometimes as parents we want our kids to do the right thing. Today, it's all about passion. Because if you're going to work long hours, if you're going to go through tough times, you better love what you're doing. For me, barbecue. I love barbecue. And I study to be the best. I am at the top of my craft. And I know that any room, anywhere in America, that if I walk in that room, there are probably only a handful of people in that room that have achieved what I have achieved. It's possible to become the best, but you got to want to be the best. You got to strive, not just to be average, and sometimes we fall in this mindset that average is okay. Well, we're just an average community. We do average work. We're just like everybody. average, but how many of you really understand the meaning of average? It means being the best of the worst or worst of the best. Why subscribe to being average when the good Lord gave us God-given talents to be the best? And when I started Famous Dave's, and this is the first time you probably have ever heard this, I would write this down. I wrote out a best of the best list. A lot of you have heard this, if you're going to be successful, you have to have goals. And you take your dreams and you give them benchmarks and you put a time frame to them, and those become goals. Well, I took it even one step further. When I started Famous Dave's, I had what was called my best of the best list. I wrote down 100 things that I could be the best at. I was going to have the best ribs, the best barbecue sauce, the best honey buttered cornbread, the best training program, the best decor. Everything that I was going to be I was going to be the best. And whatever business that you are in, I would look at that business and write down 100 things that you could be the best at. And today, it's really amazing because we have won over 700 Best of Class awards. Everything from best ribs to everything from best place to have on your resume, best place to have your last meal. In fact, somebody once told me, he said, "Dave, you're going to be my death row cook." I said, "What?" I was talking to some community group, and I guess this guy just got out of jail or something. He says, "Yeah," he says, "when I go back to jail," he says, "you're going to be my death row cook. I want my last meal from you." I love barbecue. I love it with a passion, and I never thought that Famous Dave's would grow into what it is today, because we started out in Hayward, Wisconsin, a little town of only 1,800 people. How many of you have been to the original Famous Dave's in Hayward? Quite a few of you. That's good. Thank you. I hope we took good care of you. But when I was building this Famous Dave's, people would drive by and they would say, "Dave, what are you building here?" And I would say, "I'm building the world's best rib shack." And they would look at me and they would say, "What? A rib shack in Hayward, Wisconsin? Are you nuts?" If you are doing something that is worthwhile, you're going to have people that laugh at you. And a lot of times we never follow our passion. We never follow our dreams because we are so concerned about failure. And I will tell you that if you're going to succeed, you are going to fail. And here I am in Hayward, Wisconsin, building this rib shack. And folks would tell me, "Dave, if you're going to build a rib shack, you should go down to Memphis or Kansas City where people really know barbecue." But I told them, I said, "Look, you may not think that a rib shack belongs here, but I do. And I'm going to build the world's best rib shack. I'm going to have the best ribs in America. I'm going to have the best barbecue sauce in America. I'm going to have the best honey buttered cornbread, the best country roasted chicken, the best homemade barbecue baked beans, and the best creamy coleslaw, the best smoky, tender brisket that just melts in your mouth. And the bread pudding, it's going to be the best." Now, I don't know what you guys are having for lunch, but I had a dream. And because I never gave up on that dream, by the end of this summer, and we never advertised, we were serving almost 4,000 to 6,000 people a week. Think about that. And I know you're in a small community, and some of you own your own businesses. Some of you work for other companies, and you often wonder how you're going to succeed, how you're going to compete. You can, if you're driven to be the best, if you never give up on your dreams. Famous Dave's today has won more awards than any other restaurant in history. We strive to be the best. But here's one of the key things. Here's one of the key things. A lot of times we do things for ourselves. And how many of you, when you were growing up, remember your parents telling you, "You got to study hard"? Why? So you get good grades. Well, why do you guys study hard to get good grades? So you can get into college. And then when you were in college, they said, well, you got to study hard in college to get good grades so you can get a good job. And you needed to get a good job so you can buy a house, so you can buy a car, take care of your family. That is probably one of the most fundamental reasons why I believe that almost 97% of the people in America struggle paycheck to paycheck. One of the hardest lessons I learned was it wasn't about me. You see, being successful is about creating value. It's giving more than what you are paid to do. Giving more than what you're paid to do. Creating value. Creating value is nothing more than giving of yourself through innovation, creativity, hard work, making the world a better place. You know, and a lot of times we misunderstand profit. Just last year, we had protests in Washington, D.C. Young people and other people protesting, they're making profit. Isn't that crazy? We should be all about creating value. But here's the thing about creating value. You're creating value not for yourself. You should be obsessively devoted to making other people happy. Wouldn't it be interesting if our kids understood that the subjects that they're studying in school wasn't to get a good grade or to get the job that they want, but everything that they studied was for the purposes of understanding how they can bless into the life of somebody else value. How you go about your day on a daily basis creating value for other people. Is that what drives you? To make other people happy? Or do you go to work because you need to get a paycheck? And I share this with young people. I share this at colleges and universities where I go and talk. I share this with other community groups, with other entrepreneurs. Being successful is about creating value into the lives of other people. Taking your God-gifted talents. And I believe that everybody here today has God-given talents that you can make a difference in the life of somebody else. That you can bless into the life of somebody else a better way of living. Making a positive difference. And think about it, folks. How do you live your life? Are you obsessively devoted to making other people happy? And some of you say, God, do I really got to think like that? You don't know who I'm working with. Creating value, creating profit. But what I want to share with you next is the secret to all success in life. How many of you would love to hear my version of the secret to success in life? Okay, you ready for this? Ready to write this down? It's called problems. So what? Am I hearing this guy right? I came up all this way to Medford. I got up early this morning, hear this guy talk about problems. This guy has no idea what I'm dealing with. You see, problems really are the secret to success in life. And sometimes we often think, well, man, I wish I had the opportunity this guy's had. You know, this guy has had life laid at his feet. And what they don't realize is that this person has stepped up and dealt with the adversities in life. You see, when we are going up that ladder of success, we are going up that ladder of success because we had made a decision that we are going to step up and handle our share of the problems. And a lot of people live frustrated lives because they spent their whole life running away from problems. Hey, don't talk to me, that's Joe's problem. Or this one. They ain't paying me enough to have those problems. Ever hear that one? Ever use that one? I know I used to think like that. I hated problems. I didn't want to deal with problems. How many of you have ever laid in bed at night and you just didn't want to get up the next morning because you thought your whole world, everything that you held to be true in life was just caving in on you? Ever been there? Have you ever felt like you've been jackhammered, like you've been just whacked or thumped? But that's what life is about. How many of you have ever taken a course called Success 101? Can I see a raise of hands? If you've never studied success, how do you expect to be successful? Because success isn't math, English, history, economics. How many of you have ever taken a course called Problems 101? How many of you wish you had taken a course on Problems 101? How many of you think you got your doctorate in Problems 101? And I know a lot of us as parents, we don't want our children to go through what we've been through. We don't want them to fail. But yet, this economy, the free enterprise system, was designed so that you could fail and come back. Now, I'm not advocating that you just go out and fail, but if people, when they've asked me, they said, Dave, what would you do over again in life? So I would probably give up or fail faster. I've been bankrupt twice. I know what it means to come home and ask my wife for the jewelry she's had on her that she was wearing so I could take it to a pawn shop. I know what it means to dig through seat cushions to find change so I could buy milk for my children. I've been there. Go down to Kentucky Fried Chicken and lick other people's fingers. I've been through some really tough adversities in life, folks. I never thought that I would get through the next day. I never thought that I would make it through the end of the week. But what I learned is that you don't ever give up. And if there's anything that you take away from today, is that problems are your opportunity for success. And if you want lots of opportunity and people say, God, I need opportunity, it's all around you. In fact, the good Lord, He's looking down. He said, don't you get it? Adversity, that's your opportunity. And don't you ever quit on me. Because so many people, they quit instead of hanging in there. And they want to run away from their problem instead of sticking in there. You see, when you hang in there and you stay true to your dream and you're just determined, you persevere, when you get to the other side, you become wiser, you become stronger. And I believe today that you cannot be a leader, you cannot be successful without adversity in your life. You can't lead other people to be successful. You can't have the wisdom to share if you run from adversity. In fact, you ought to go to your supervisor or your boss and say, hey, guess what? Today's your lucky day. I know you have been dealing with some ugly, sticky problems, but you can give that problem to me. I'll handle it for you. And so often we want to curse the Almighty God and we say, Lord, in your good book it says that blessings and abundance are mine. But Lord, where are these blessings? Because it seems like all we've had is adversity. We need a break. And the good Lord, He says, well, it's your attitude. You're whining and complaining. And you can't whine and complain when you're dealing with adversity. Yeah, but you don't know what I'm dealing with. You see, if you never give up, and you have that optimism that you're going to get through, the people with the resources, the people with the ideas, the people that can help you will want to help you if you always maintain a positive, we can do this attitude. But if you're one of these guys that are always, or gals that are saying, things are so tough around here and things really need to change and I got it so rough, people, this world's going down to hell in a handbasket and things are just awful. And they rumor and gossip. The people with the resources are going to avoid those people like the plague. It's okay to have problems. It's how we grow. It's our opportunity. And I really believe today, folks, that the greatest resource that we have in America is our spirit of optimism. It's the hope that we have, that we never ever give up. And being able to share that hope with our young people, that this truly is the greatest country, that no matter what, that we will persevere, that we will find new ways. And yes, it's tough, but that's okay, because that's how we grow. That's how our children grow. And I like showing this picture. How many of you remember this? Scottie Pippen, when Michael Jordan played his heart out. Scottie didn't say, Michael, get off the court, you're stinking it up, my God. And see, that's what we often do with our friends, neighbors, and other employees. We talk about them. Instead, Scottie went over and he put his arm around him and said, let me help you. That's what we need to do. The peoples that are in our community, we need to give of ourselves to help them. And when we're faced with those tough times, we got to look at it as a challenge. Because in a football game, we know the other side is wanting to crush us, right? They want to beat us up. They want to win. They want to destroy us. And we want to do the same thing to them. This is how we approach problems. We go at it with the spirit of a game that we're going to win. We don't ever let the other team, we don't ever let the adversity get us down. We always have that spirit of optimism. The success of America is in this room. The strength of America is in this room. And I just want to close with a poem that I love the best, and I always close with it. It's called The Builder. I saw a gang of men from my hometown. A gang of men tearing a building down. With a heave and a hoe and a yes, yes, yell, they swung a beam and a sidewalk fell. And I went up to that foreman and I said, Foreman, are these men skilled as the ones you use if you had to build? He looked at me and he said, no, indeed. He said, common labor is all I need, for I can destroy in a day what it's taken a builder 10 years to build. And I asked myself as I went my way, which one of these roles am I playing? Am I one who's constantly tearing things down as I carelessly make my way around? Or am I one whose community will be a little bit better just because I was there? And it's my hope and prayer that today you will look at your community, you will look at the opportunities that you have in your own life, your children, with renewed hope. And forget what they do in Washington, D.C. It's all about my economy. It's my town, my community, my family. And I believe that someday your community will come back to you and say, thank you. Thank you for being a person of character. Thank you for staying true to your values and your dreams. Because of you, you not only have made a difference in my life, but you have made our community stronger. And folks, I'm a real believer that we need to get our kids back in Sunday school. This country was founded on the precepts of faith. And I'm not afraid to say that my life wouldn't be where it is today if God hadn't changed my life. And I don't believe that there's a higher honor than when my time has come and gone, that folks will say, there was a God-fearing husband to his wife, and there was a God-fearing father to his children, and there went a God-fearing leader in his community. What kind of legacy are you leaving? Thank you, and God bless.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks for jump-starting our morning here and getting us going.